In this video, let's talk about what WordPress plugins actually are and how to get them built, typically by hiring developers.
This video is brought to you by EpiPies Academy.
Really what it is, it's a very small piece of software that just enhances the basic WordPress functionality. All WordPress is like a basic sort of outline of features for creating content, but it doesn't deal with some specifics. And what the plugins are things that deal with some specific little features that enhance basic WordPress functionality. It might be to fix some kind of a little problem or automate something, or just to make something better in some specific field. Like in some niche, some users might need something that WordPress, the company, can't do it because they can't get into too many specifics. And that's where independent developers or independent entrepreneurs add these add-ons, which are the WordPress plugins. And it usually really is made by independent developers or independent entrepreneurs. Yes, sure, there are some big companies in this space, but typically they started out as one-person businesses, and just because they succeeded, they grew into sizable companies. And precisely because it's a small piece of software that's not too complicated, it's a business that's relatively easy to get into, which makes it an attractive business. There's a small barrier to entry. So let's talk about how to get the WordPress plugins actually made. This is not a development course. So in this course, you do not learn software development. If you are a developer, it will be relatively easy to create the plugin by looking at the official WordPress documentation for developers, or maybe taking a development course for WordPress. It's actually not that hard because the scope of the software is not that hard. The technologies are typically that are involved are typically not that hard. So developing is not a huge issue here, precisely because it's a small piece of software. Even if you have to hire, which a lot of entrepreneurs, that's what they do anyway, even if you can develop the plugin yourself, you might want to save yourself the time or the headaches of learning a new technology and just hire developers on a site like Fiverr.com or Upwork.com. There are many affordable and high quality freelancers who you can hire there, who can create your plugin for you relatively quickly with a relatively tight budget. There are two issues that typically come up when hiring: giving the developers good instructions that they can follow and hiring good people, because there's a lot of bad developers out there and everybody will always tell you, I'm great. There's nobody who wants to get hired who says, I'm bad, I'm inexperienced, don't hire me. Nobody says that, right? Like, people say, I'm great. So how do you hire? Well, you don't start with hiring a single person and giving them the entire task at one time. It might feel like the thing to do because you just want to outsource. You hire one guy or girl who says they're good, and you give them everything and hope like in a couple of weeks they'll bring back some fantastic product. But usually it doesn't work that way. So you want to enter a relationship slowly. So you would give them a small task. So the relationship starts even before you give them the task. You just have to ask them a little bit of questions, like how would you go about building this? What can I expect? Very basic questions, but you just want to monitor their professionalism. They should be busy, so you don't want to waste too much of their time, but you just want to see, are they quick to understand what you want? Are they sharp as individuals? Do you have good communication with them, or does it take like 10 emails just to get to some one point that another person should have understood from just the first time you said it? After you do this with a few developers, maybe like 10 different potential ones, some will just have bad communication or no communication or no real chemistry with you, and they'll be people you don't hire. So you will have narrowed down your field, and then the field that's remaining, you want to start hiring them for some small projects just to see if they're good. And of course, when you hire on Fiverr.com and Upwork.com, there are many developers. You specifically want to hire ones who have WordPress plugin development experience so that they don't have to learn on the job. They can just do something that they've done many times before, and they know how to do it really well. So that experience is really important experience. Once you identify them, you've asked them the basic questions, it's time to begin hiring, and you give them all the small tasks, and you compare who does a better job, who approaches the work better. And then the next test is a bigger task, and then you give them bigger and bigger tasks, and so on until one sort of becomes the winner that you actually already have built a working relationship with. You know what you're getting when you're working with that freelancer. So now let's talk a little bit about requirements and budgeting. And you really need requirements to be accurate and concrete, because you can't just tell them, build me something, and expect them to read your mind. So it's your job to give them very good and clear requirements. You want to give yourself a sort of like a maximum budget for your launch, and your job is to make sure that you also set aside money for ongoing updates, because you're going to have to continue to improve the plugin long term and fix bugs and everything like that. Because most people think that, oh, it's just about launching the plugin, but really it's a long-term project. And likely most of the money will be spent over the years updating it and improving it rather than the launch. And because it's a small business, it's not something you raise money for from investors. Some fundraising is possible, like maybe Kickstarter or something like that. But generally, this is something you kind of do out of pocket, so you want to make sure the costs don't balloon. The best way to make sure that the costs do not balloon and get out of control is to have a limited set of features that are useful features, but limited set. And you start with something called MVP. In the startup industry, it's the way to go. The MVP stands for minimum viable product. It's the minimum, smallest actual product that can be used, that you can give to your customers to use and gather feedback. And then based on that feedback, you iteratively and quickly improve in very, very small steps so that you can continuously get feedback and you don't get sidetracked with building wrong features. That is going to help you keep cost relatively low, and you can maybe get your first plugin built for a couple of $100, maybe $500, certainly $1,000 if you are careful and accurately plan your MVP. That's your job. And the documents that you would give to the developers are just an outline of the design and the features that need to be built, and precisely your first idea that you might give to your programmers as a test of like, how are they to work with that little tiny project that we discussed. Maybe you make them create a design flow and show you that. Maybe you make them program the first feature and show you how that would work. And you would want to work with them very closely during the development and install whatever they're building into your WordPress setup so you can test it out. And you keep on wanting to test every little bit that they update so that you can tell them, hey, okay, you're going in the wrong direction here. That's not what I had in mind. So in case something is going wrong, you can course correct it instead of waiting for weeks and getting something maybe right, maybe wrong, but you've spent all the money on it. Every day you'll be on top. You can be on top of it, and you can see if they're going in the right direction. If they're going in the right direction, fantastic. It's going to go on budget probably, and you're going to get what you want. And doing this and testing the plugin out yourself on a frequent basis will be the cheap way to fix problems early so that nearly no development becomes wasteful, and you save your money and you're able to have something that you can launch relatively quickly, hopefully within a few weeks.